Dublin City. It's been around for 1,000 years, and myself and the lads in the Dubliners have been singing its praises for 25 of them. Now, there's no way you'd fit the full story of Dublin into an hour. You could be walking around the place for weeks, still not have the full picture. But what we do have time for is a bit of history, a few yardens, and plenty of music. And of course, the odd stop off for a pint or two. A taste, you might say, of the spirit of Dublin. Dublin is steeped in history and in the love of its generations. James Joyce had a mad passion for Anna Livia, the Liffey. It was a black pool, in Gaelic a Dove Linn, formed where the rivers Liffey and Poddle met, that gave Dublin its name when it was born. Since then it's grown into a rascally friend that you can see good and bad in, but can't help being charmed by. The Dublin character is as unique as the town that bred it, inspired many's the song to celebrate the Dublin way of going. And since the Dubliners started playing, donkeys years ago in O'Donoghue's pub, we've probably sung them all. Oh, poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Oh, poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. For it's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. At the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Was she poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. It's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. At the heart of the roll is Dicey Riley. Oh, she walks along Fitzgibbon Street with an independent air, and then it's down by Summer Hill, and as the people stare, she says it's nearly 1:30, and it's time I had another little one. At the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Was she poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. It's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. At the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. All long years ago when men were men and fancied May Oblong, or lovely Becky Cooper, or Maggie's Mary Wong, one woman put them all to shame, just one was worthy of the name, and the name of that dame was Dicey Riley. Was she poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. It's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. And the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Oh, but time went catching up with her, like many pretty whores, and it's after you along the street, before you're out the doors. Their looks all fade and the balance weighed, but out of all that great brigade, still the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Was she poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. It's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. At the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Was she poor old Dicey Riley, she is taken to the sup. Poor old Dicey Riley, she will never give it up. It's off each morning to the pub, and then she's in for another little drop. And the heart of the roll was Dicey Riley. Of course, who are we to be slagging poor old Dicey? So what would anyone think of a group that was formed in a pub and does most of its gigs in pubs? It was the late Luke Kelly, the Lord of mercy on him, who said we should name ourselves after James Joyce's book of short stories, Dubliners. Since the early days in O'Donoghue's and places like the Royal Hotel in Howth and the Embankment in Tala, we've been singing Dublin ballads through good and bad times. We were very lucky, of course, because we caught on not just in Ireland, but all around the world. Down the years, we've made dozens of records and played in at least 60 countries. You might say we're a bit like Dublin ambassadors to the world, bringing the songs of our hometown to places far and wide. It's certainly a far cry from bussing it to gigs in Dublin pubs to jetting it around the world and back again. But sure, for all the high life in foreign parts, there's nothing like getting back to the old sod. It's more than a matter of having been born and reared here. Sure, isn't it the spirit of Dublin that keeps us going? Well, enough about the Dubliners. But what about Dublin itself? The first real settlements along the banks of the Liffey were built by the Vikings 1,000 years ago. And here, under St. Audien's Church, a taste of what life was like then has been reconstructed with the help of a few genuine Vikings. Oh, there you are. What do you do here?
I'm the builder.
Oh, I see. And what are you?
I'm learning to be a builder.
What are you doing?
I'm a trader. If you come down to my boat, I can trade for some wine if you have silver on you.
No, I'll go in here and have a look.
I am the best bread maker in Dublin.
It's here, around the area known as the Liberties, that Dublin grew up. Christ Church Cathedral was built by the Norman warrior Strongbow for St. Lawrence O'Toole in the 12th century. But underneath it is the oldest surviving building in Dublin. The crypt started out as a religious place. There's 3 chapels here. But later, the nooks were hired out to shopkeepers and publicans. The cathedral and markets carried on together at first, but the racket from the revellers below proved too much during religious services above, and the place was finally closed down. It was used then to store such things as relics and statues of forgotten lords. And then there's this little darling, the ancient stocks of the Liberty of Christ Church. This is where the Dean put people who thwarted him or broke his laws. By the way, did you ever wonder where the expression the Liberties came from? Well, centuries ago, a liberty was a stretch of land given to somehow a lord or archbishop by either royalty or row. And it meant they didn't just own the land. They were a law unto themselves on that ground. There's 8 liberties in this area, and some even had gates and walls dividing them, and you'd have to pay to get in. That kind of grandeur has faded, of course, but the Liberties is known and loved today as the cradle of the Dublin character. It's the setting for many yarns and songs. And my own favourite is a song about a famous event that took place here every Christmas, the Ragman's Ball. These fellas who made their living by trading old clothes and tatters collected door to door would gather here for a booze up and, well, other things besides.
Oh, come listen to me for a while, me good friends one and all, and I'll sing to you a verse or two about a famous ball. Now the ball was given by some friends who lived down in our street, in a certain house of the Liberties, where the ragmen used to meet. Well, for eating we had plenty now, as much as we could hold. We drank Brady's loop-line porter, until round the floor we rolled. In the midst of all the confusion, someone shouted for a song, when up jumps old Dunlavin and sings, keep rolling your barrel along. Well, says my one, you're a queer one now, and Biddy, you're hard to bait. Oh, when up jumps Liza Boland, and she told her to hold her prate. Then my one made a cloud at her, she missed her and hit the wall, and the 2 of them went to the ambulance the night of the Ragman's Ball. Then we all sat down to some ham pairings when everything was quiet. And for broken noses, I must say, we had a lovely night. Black eyes, they were in great demand, not to mention split heads and all. So if anyone wants to commit suicide, let him come to the Ragman's Ball. Yeah, it's all to that.
I think a lot of Dubliners don't realise the stories behind the streets they walk down every day. For instance, this is Marsh's Library, one of the oldest libraries in Europe. So if you'd like to stick with me, we'll have a little ramble and a gander at some historic sites. One historic site, visited by a historic character, is St. Patrick's Cathedral in the Liberties. When Oliver Cromwell led his 13,000 soldiers through Dublin, he rode on horseback into the church and let his horse drink from the baptismal font. No respect. In later years, the cathedral was run by Dean Swift. Jonathan Swift, to you, the man who wrote Gulliver's Travels. When the Normans took over the running of the place from the Vikings back in the 12th century, they built a massive wall around the town. This is part of that original wall. And that wall set Dublin apart from the rest of the country. It was from Dublin Castle, built on the edge of the original medieval town, that Dubliners were ruled. In those days, Dublin was a fairly small affair, and for hundreds of years it suffered plagues and sieges and the like. In the early 17th century, Dublin still only had a population of 10,000. But by the end of that century, thanks to the arrival of Jewish, Dutch and other immigrants and the build-up of commerce, it reached 60,000. In the 18th century, the real splendour of Dublin started to take shape. This building, for almost 200 years now, the Bank of Ireland, was built as the Irish House of Parliament. It was built in 4 stages by 4 architects, and when it became a bank, they installed cannons, sentries, to mind a few bob inside. And then there's Trinity College, Ireland's most famous seat of learning. It was established in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth, and the statues of Scholar Burke and playwright Goldsmith have looked down on its visitors for centuries. Such great people as Wolfe Tone, Oscar Wilde and Samuel Beckett studied here. It was originally set up only for members of the Church of Ireland, but in these ecumenical days, it's open to all comers. In Trinity's old library, you'll find this gem, the Book of Kells. This is not the real one, of course. They keep the real one here under glass. No one even knows what monks and what monastery put their sweat and eyesight into writing this book back in 800 AD. But it was kept in Kells, County Meath, until it was brought to Dublin in the 17th century. The pages are made from the hides of calves, and the colours are made from plants and flowers from all over the world. There's even a particular shade that comes from the belly of an African insect. The gorgeous work has 680 pages and illustrates the 4 Gospels written in Latin. It must be one of the world's finest pieces of religious art. Wouldn't art and old buildings give you a terrible thirst? Whether we like it or not, the drink has played a big part in the Dublin way of going. So having the price of a pint was a great measure of how you were fixed. And the Dubliners were very fond of the gargle. So there's nothing like it. And it took a great frequenter of Dublin pubs, Flann O'Brien, to write what amounts to a homage to the gargle. When things go wrong and will not come right, though you do the best you can. When life looks black as the dark of night, the point of playing is your only man.
Well, when money is tight, it's hard to get, and your horse is also ran, and all you've left is a heap of debt, the point of playing is your only man.
When health is bad and your heart feels strange and your face is pale and wan, when doctors say that you need a change, point of playing is your only man.
When food is scarce and your larder bare, and no rashers grease your pan, when hunger grows and your meals are rare, a pint of plain is your only man.
In times of trouble and lousy strife, you've still got a darling plan. You still can turn to a brighter life. A point of playing is your only man. But sure, you can't spend all your time enjoying yourself. And in the city, there's always work to be done. Dublin was a merchant city, and the River Liffey was its life's blood. Dubliners weren't work shy, and commerce blossomed. By the end of the 18th century, with a population of 150,000, it was one of the largest cities in Europe, and the second city of the British Empire. In the heyday of George and Dublin, the gentry were making a stack, and they lived in dignified splendour, with their servants downstairs in the basements and themselves upstairs, lording it over Dublin society. Dublin to this day boasts some of the finest examples of Georgian architecture. The fanlights and the red brick of Merrion Square and Fitzwilliam Square are a glory. But Dublin is a curio. It was left out of the race for growth and importance after the 1798 rebellion, when there were fears in England that it was getting too powerful. Caught between being the capital of the land of saints and scholars and being an outpost of the British Empire, it then bore the brunt of changes in the 20th century. While thousands of Dubliners were off fighting for king and country on the green and bloody fields of Flanders and the Somme, Dublin was the scene of the 1916 Easter Rising. That rebellion eventually led to the forming of the Irish Free State, with Dublin as its capital. But the birth of the Republic was a painful one. A civil war followed, with Irishman turned against Irishman, and the city an innocent bystander being battered by the struggle. Finally, after 700 years of English rule, and with all the landmarks of the empire still around it, the last British soldiers left, and the city and its people had a kind of crisis of identity. In the 1930s, Dublin was, as the poet Louis MacNeice put it, a town with porter running from the taps with a head of yellow cream, and Nelson on his pillar, watching his world collapse. Up until that time, Dubliners were a very tight-knit community in the city. They were the people Sean O'Casey immortalised in plays like Juno and the Paycock and The Plough and the Stars. But the city centre grew tired, and once elegant Georgian townhouses fell into decay as tenements. These grand old houses might have teemed with life, but they also teemed with rats and filth. The romance of staying with the people you'd grown up with for generations was hard to forget, though. And Dubliners were horrified when it was announced that the corporation would move them out to 2 up, 2 down houses in faraway suburbs. They couldn't bear to face the prospect of being shifted out beyond the Pale, where Brendan Behan's father claimed they ate their young. So prejudiced were Dubliners about life in the country that they had bloodthirsty ballads about all kinds of goings-on in the wilds outside the city. And one such penny dreadful kind of song is still a Dublin favourite.
There was an old woman and she lived in the wood. Wheel ya, wall ya. There was an old woman and she lived in the wood, down by the river Salya. She had a baby 3 months old. Wheel ya, wall ya. She had a baby 3 months old, down by the river Salya. She had a penknife long and sharp. Wheel ya, wall ya. She had a penknife long and sharp, down by the river Salya. She stuck the penknife in the baby's heart. Wheel ya, wall ya. Stuck the penknife in the baby's heart, down by the river Salya. There were 3 low knocks coming knocking on the door. Wheel ya, wall ya. 3 low knocks coming knocking on the door, down by the river Salya. There were 2 policemen and a man. Wheel ya, wall ya. 2 policemen and a man, down by the river Salya. They took her away and they put her into jail. wheelie, oh, yeah. They took her away and they put her in the jail down by the river Sawyer. They put the rope around her neck, wheelie, oh, yeah. They put the rope around her neck down by the river Sawyer. They pulled the rope and she got hung, wheelie, oh, yeah. Pulled the rope and she got hung down by the river Sawyer. Well, that was the end of the woman in the wood, a wheelie, oh, yeah. And that was the end of the baby too, down by the river Sawyer.
When the move from the inner city finally came, it was to places like Crumlin that Dubliners were shifted. No matter that for the first time they had their own toilets and gardens and room enough for their families, they were still far from gone on the place. All they could do was face it with what you might call the courage of the bewildered. The author and playwright Brendan Behan was probably the most reluctant Crumliner. He lived here in number 70 Kildare Road. They've even put a plaque up on the house. But he was a hard man too, mind you. By the age of 16, he was arrested in Liverpool for possession of explosives and served time in Borstal prison. He was no sooner out of that than he was lagged for shooting at a detective. But he used his experience to write such modern classics as Borstal Boy, The Hostage, and The Queer Fella.
Oh, a hungry feeling came o'er me stealing, and the mice were squealing in my prison cell, and the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. To begin the morning, the screw was bawling, get up, you bowsy, and clean up your cell. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Now the screw was peeping as the lag lay sleeping, dreaming about his girdle sal. And the old triangle went jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. Up in the female prison there are 75 women, and among them now I wish I did dwell. Then that old triangle could go jingle jangle all along the banks of the Royal Canal. All along the banks of the Royal Canal.
Dublin, of course, was always a great place for producing writers, but never a great one for holding on to them. James Joyce had to get the hell out of it altogether, even though he went on writing with the loving detail of his genius about the old town. He immortalised Dublin in his works, and the academics and the highbrows of the world sometimes lose sight of the fact that Joyce's writing is as Dublin as Sandycove's Martello Tower. He captured Dublinese to such perfection that he turned the English language upside down and inside out. You see, you have to remember, the English language was only brought in. There were many more cultures and languages here from all over Europe, and of course, up from the country. Words and language, songs and stories have been our strength for 1,000 years. It's bred into us. You may not know, for instance, that there's an old Dublin song, and Joyce loved it so much that he named one of his books after it, Finnegan's Wake.
Tim Finnegan lived in Walking Street, a gentleman Irish mighty odd. He had a brogue both rich and sweet, and to rise in the world he carried a hod. But Tim in a bit of a tibbler's way, with a love of the liquor he was born, and to send him on his way each day, he'd love in a crater every morn. Whack full of that when you don't see your partners around the floor with your colour shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. One morning Tim was rather full. His old head felt heavy, which made him shake. He fell off the ladder and he broke his skull, and they carried him home, his corpse to wake. Oh, they wrapped him up in a nice clean sheet, and they laid him out upon the bed, with a bottle of whiskey at his feet and a bottle of porter at his head. Whack full of that when you don't see your partners around the floor with your colour shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. Well, his friends assembled at the wake, and Mrs. Finnegan called for lunch. Well, first she brought them tea and cake, then pipes, tobacco and brandy punch. Then the widow Malone began to cry. Such a lovely corpse did you never see? Was it Tim of Orden, and why did you die? Well, you held your gobs as Muddy McGee. Whack full of that when you don't see your partners around the floor with your colour shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. Oh, well, Mary Murphy took up the job. Biddy, she are wrong, I'm sure. Oh, well, Biddy fetched her a belt and a gob, and left her sprawling on the floor. Oh, Civil War did then engage, well, woman to woman and man to man. Chill lady law was all the rage, and a row and a ruction and soon began. Whack full of dough when you don't see your partners around the floor with your colour shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. Well, Mick Maloney ducked his head when a bottle of whiskey flew at him. He ducked and landing on the bed, the whiskey scatters over Tim. I'll be daddy revived and see how he rises. Tim Finnegan rising in the bed, saying 20 hour whiskey around like blazes. Be the tunted and Jesus, did you think I was dead? Whack full of dough when you don't see your partner around the floor with your colour shake. Isn't it the truth? I tell you, lots of fun at Finnegan's Wake. How will your old one table?
Of course, James Joyce wasn't the only Dublin genius, not by a long shot. Sure, we produced some of the greatest writers in the world, including 2 Nobel Prize winners. It's a shame, though, that so many of them had to leave the country to make their mark. And sure, in the end, didn't it take a writer from Monaghan, Patrick Kavanagh, to come up to Dublin and adopt the place? Patrick wrote The Great Hunger and many another wonderful poem. He lived in Pembroke Road, and these were his haunts. He spent so much time strolling along the Grand Canal that there's even a seat dedicated to him. Well, I was walking along here one day and I met Paddy Kavanagh. Will you have a drink, said Paddy. I will, said Paddy. Will we go to Mooney's? Paddy said, oh, he said, we can't go to Mooney's. He said, I'm bad out of it. We may go to Searson's. Searson's, Paddy. I said, well, the trouble is, Paddy, I said, I'm bad out of Searson's. We'll have to go to the Crooked Barbie. Oh, says Paddy, hold on, says he. I'm bad out of the Crooked Barbie, says he. We may go to the Waterloo House. Says, right, Paddy, the trouble is, I'm bad out of the Waterloo House. What? Oh, well, says he. Good luck, I'll see you again. Paddy Kavanagh was full of what Joyce called Irish humour wet and dry. And once he even wrote a poem, wondering how he'd be remembered in times to come. If ever you go to Dublin town, in 100 years or so, inquire for me in Bagot Street and what I was like to know. Oh, he was a queer one, for the little I do. He was a queer one, I tell you. On Pembroke Road, look out for me ghost, dishevelled with shoes untied, playing to the railings with little children, whose children have long since died. Oh, he was a nice man, for the little I do. He was a nice man. I tell you. I love the sights and sounds and smells of Grafton Street. I remember in the old days, we used to love the smell of porter being bottled. You'd smell it coming up from the grills. It'd drive you into the place. And then, of course, Bewley's, and the smell of the coffee being ground in the window, and the people going in there for breakfast or a break from work or shopping. It's along here that you'll have buskers of all sorts, serenading shoppers and putting a spring in their steps. And if you spend enough time moseying around, you can guarantee you're going to bump into someone you know. A great Dublin landmark and a great haunt for people who want to just take it easy in the middle of the city hustle is Stephen's Green. Over 100 years ago, it was closed and dilapidated. But the Guinness family, fair play to them, paid for it to be all done up and opened again, which only goes to prove what a social service the drinking man is providing to Dublin. You know what I mean? Step back from Dublin and you can see what brought the Vikings here 1,000 years ago. It nestles in a wide valley below the mountains and facing the sea, cradled by nature like a favourite child. Mind you, one of the great things about Dublin is that you only have to go up the road to the Phoenix Park and you're out in the country. At 1,700 acres, it's the largest walled park in Europe. And for centuries, it's been the place where Dubliners go for picnics, rambles, a curtain session in some of its quieter spots, or a visit to the zoo.
Oh, thunder and lightning is no lark when Dublin city is in the dark. So if you've any money, go up to the park and view the zoological gardens. We went up there to see the zoo. We saw the lion and the kangaroo. There was females and she-males of every hue up in the zoological gardens. We went out there be Castle Knock. She to me, she will court on the luck. Then I knew she was one of the rare old stock from outside the zoological gardens. Oh, thunder and lightning is no lark when Dublin city is in the dark. So if you've any money, go up to the park and view the zoological gardens. We went up there on our honeymoon. She to me, if you don't come soon, I'll have to get in with the hairy baboon up in the zoological gardens. She to me, it's 7 o'clock, and it's time for me to be changing me frock, for I'd love to see that owl cockatoo up in the zoological gardens. She to me, me lovely Jack, sure I'd love a ride on the elephant's back. If you don't get a word that I'll give you such a smack up in the zoological gardens. Well, thunder and lightning is no lark when Dublin city is in the dark. So if you've any money, go up to the park and view the zoological gardens.
At night, Dublin becomes a different place. Couples, after meeting under Cleary's clock or at the front gates of Trinity College, set off to enjoy themselves. We go into the pictures or for a jar. There's a less savoury side to the city too, of course, but that's life today. There was a time, though, when certain ladies were looked upon with a touch of fondness. The children even had skipping songs about them.
Oh, down in Bombo Lane, there is a big fat woman, and if you want to know her name, you have to pay a shilling. Soldiers 2 and 6, sailors 3 and a penny, big fat man £2.10, little kids a penny.
The area around what used to be called Montgomery Street, the Monto, was a place much frequented by sailors on shore leave and many a Dublin boyo hoping to meet a pavement hostess, a lady of the evening. But the Legion of Mary weren't long putting a stop to that, I can tell you. They had all the brothels closed and changed the street name to Cahill Brewer, after one of our patriots. But it was such a famous centre for the oldest profession that it was immortalised in song.
Oh, if you've got a wing, oh, take her up to Ringo, where the waxy sing, oh, all the day. If you had your fill of porter and you can't go any further, give your man the order, back to the quay. And take her up to Monto, Monto, Monto. Take her up to Monto, Langaroo. To you. Oh, you heard of the buckshot Foster, the dirty owl imposter. He took his mutton, lost her, up the furry glen. He first put on his bowler, then he buttoned up his trousers, and he whistled for a growler, and he said, my man, take me up to Monto, Monto, Monto. Take me up to Monto, Langaroo. To you. Well, you heard of the Dublin Fusiliers, the dirty old bamboozeliers. They went to get the childer. 1, 2, 3. Marching from the Linen Hall, there's one for every cannonball. And Vicky's going to send yous all o'er the sea. But first go up to Monto, Monto, Monto. First go up to Monto, Langaroo. To you. Well, Carey told him skin the goat, O'Donnell put him on the boat. He never should have been afloat, the dirty skite. It wasn't very sensible to tell on the Invincibles. They stood up for the principles day and night. Be going up to Monto, Monto, Monto. Going up to Monto, Langaroo. To you. Now when the Tsar of Russia and the King of Prussia landed in the Phoenix Park in a big balloon, they asked the Polish band to play the wedding in the green. But the buggers in the depot didn't know the tune, so they all went up to Monto, Monto, Monto. They all went up to Monto, Langaroo. To you. The Queen, she came to calling us. She wanted to see all of us. I'm glad she didn't fall on us. She's 80 stone. Well, Mr. Me, Lord Mayor, she is, it's all you've got to show to me. Why, no, ma'am, there's some more to see. Mogue Mahowan. And he took her up to Monto, Monto, Monto. He took her up to Monto, Langaroo. To you.
In the 60s, when myself and the lads were starting up, Dublin was crawling with show bands and ballad groups. The look of the city was changing too. Some people saw fit to put a bomb under Admiral Nelson, feeling he'd spent enough time lording it over O'Connell Street. But there were other places that people in their wisdom saw fit to replace with office blocks. Places dear to the heart of many a Dub. The Theatre Royal, the Metropole and Capitol cinemas were all pulled down. Dublin got its one and only skyscraper then too. The Irish Transport and General Workers Union's Liberty Hall. Dublin today is going through even more changes and developments, all keeping up with the times, of course. I suppose with all those changes, you might wish that the old days and the old ways were still with us.
Raised on songs and stories, heroes of renown, the passing tales and glories that once was Dublin town. The hallowed halls and houses, the haunting children's rhymes, that once was part of Dublin in the rare old times. Ring a rosy, as the light declines, I'll remember Dublin city in the rare old times. Oh, me name it is Sean Dempsey, as Dublin as could be, born hard and late in Pimlico, in a house that ceased to be. By trade I was a cooper, lost out to redundancy, like my house that fell to progress, my trade's a memory. And I courted Peggy Dignan, as pretty as you please, a rogue and a child of Mary from the rebel liberties. I lost her to a student chap with skin as black as coal, when he took her off to Birmingham, she took away my soul. Ring a rosy, as the light declines, I'll remember Dublin city in the rare old times. Oh, the years have made me bitter, the gargle dims me brain, 'cause Dublin keeps on changing and nothing seems the same. The pillar and the Met have gone, the Royal long since pulled down, as the grey unyielding concrete makes a city of my town. Ring a rosy, as the light declines, I remember Dublin city in the rare old times. Fare thee well, sweet Anna Liffey, I can no longer stay and watch the new glass cages that spring up along the quay. My mind's too full of memories, too old to hear new chimes. I'm a part of what was Dublin in the rare old times. Ring a rosy, as the light declines, I remember Dublin city in the rare old times. ring-a-rosy. As the lights declines, I remember Dublin city in the rare old times.
Dublin is still alive and kicking, and sure won't today be tomorrow's rare old times. You see, it's the Dubliner that keeps Dublin in a class of its own, and no better place to find a rail dub than in Moore Street. The traders here have been passing on their stalls from generation to generation. The lovely and hard-working lassies will give you an earful of Dublinese, and they're more than used to having the cameras come to visit.
And your lady's a queen, God bless her. Grafton Street's a wonderland. There's magic in the air. There's diamonds in your lady's eyes and gold dust in my hair. And if you don't believe me, come and meet me there in Dublin on this sunny Sunday morning.
Fair play to you, very good, well done.
I can say hello to Joe in Australia. Are you born, Ducky? Look into me, gilgy wires.
Where do you go for the drink now? There's no pub.
I don't drink,
You
Ronnie.
don't drink, do you not?
Don't drink.
You're not approved of it?
I like sex, though.
Yeah. Not too bad, what else did you say? What else did you say? I don't go very well, huh? Yeah, we were waiting for it. Well, America's not really fun. We were enjoying that. 1,000 years of breeding and brazenness has gone into the making of Dublin and its people. The Dubliners' way with words would run rings around you, and their spirit is what keeps the city's body and soul together. So, Dublin lives on, through good, bad and indifferent times. It may well have its drawbacks, but for charm, it's second to none. 1,000 years old, it's still a smasher and a home to be proud of. And I know that the Dubliners group and the people of Dublin all wish the best for our jewel and darling, grubby old city. Well, there you have it. God knows we didn't fit it all in, but we did our best. And I hope you enjoyed the tour and the bit of music and the bit of chat. And next time you're around the old town, maybe you think of raising a glass to Dublin's fair city. Good luck, and God bless you.
In Dublin's fair city, where the girls are so pretty, I first set my eyes on sweet Molly Malone as she wheeled her wheelbarrow through the streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. She was a fishmonger, and sure 'twas no wonder, for so were her father and mother before, and they wheeled their barrow through the streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh. Died of a fever, and sure no one could save her, and that was the end of sweet Molly Malone. Now her ghost wheels her barrow through the streets broad and narrow, crying cockles and mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive, 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 oh, alive, alive, oh, crying cockles and mussels, alive.